Hey guys, it's Belle, and in this video, we are going to be reading through and translating the hypothetical poem B from the Old High German poem known as Muspilli, and this is going to be from lines 37 to 62, concerning the fight between the prophet Elijah and the Antichrist, and this is indeed the section in which we have the word Muspilli. So let's get on with it. If you want to pause the video and have a go at translating this on your own using the GOS, feel free to do so. And as usual, forgive me if my old High German pronunciation is not the greatest, it being not my specialty. So, what does it say? Dat hartig rachon dia wereld rechtwison, dat skuli der Antichristo mit Eliase pagan. Der Worch is gefannet, denne werdet unter in Wick arhapan. Kämpfen sind so kräftig, die Kosa ist so michel. Elias streitet pi den ewigen Lieb, willi den Rechtkernon dat richtige starkan. Petiu skal imo helfen, der himmlisches gewaltet. Der Antichristos stet pi demo altfiante, stet pi demo satanasse. Der innan varsenkan skal. Petiu skal in der wiksteti wundgefallen, enti in demo sinde sigalos verdan. Doch wanet des vilo Gottmano, dat Elias in demo wige arvardet verde. And so, what does this all mean? Dat hortig rachon dia wereld rechtwison. Now, this is an accusative and infinitive construction. The main verb here is hortig, which is a common refrain. Gefreien each, for instance, in Old English, I heard. It's a common poetic trope of the poet himself saying, I have heard. We can hear it, for instance, in the Old High German poem Hildebrand's Lied, which I have done a video on if you want to check that out. Dat gehörte ich sagen, I have heard it be said. So, dat hörte ich rachon, I have heard, dia wereld rechtwison, the world right knowers, literally. So, the people who truly know this world well or correctly. It's an interesting construction, this wereld rechtwison, because the word wereld, the world, is often used to contrast heavenly or spiritual learning. The word wereld is often associated with the terrestrial, secular knowledge. So it's interesting that these wereld rechtwison are clearly giving some kind of spiritual Christian knowledge here, even though they have a very secular term used to describe them. And so this is an accusative infinitive construction, meaning I have heard the world right knowers, or the prophets maybe, to reckon, to account. Das skuli der Antichristo mit Eliase pagan. That the Antichrist will have to fight pagan mit Eliase, with the prophet Elijah. Der Worch ist gewaffnet. The fiend is beweaponed, which is a fun word. And a quick note also that in Old English, the equivalent of this word gewappnet can refer to a person who has a penis. It can be the term for biologically male. And so that might be a double entendre happening in the Old High German as well. Denne wird unter in Wick arhapan. Then he becomes raised, when he becomes raised up into the battle. Kämpfen sind so kräftig. The warriors are so mighty. This is a false friend with the modern English word crafty, which, although it does descend from the same etymology, means something different. Die Cosa ist so michel. Now, this word causa is interesting. It probably comes from the Latin causa, which means, in a legal sense, the sort of reason for a court case being raised. So it's an interesting learning of this phrase to refer to maybe the din of battle. And it perhaps, if we believe that the poems are actually one, it perhaps draws some kind of reference or allusion to the previous sections of the poem, which talk about Jesus establishing a court. So, Elias slítit biden evigon leap. Elias struggles or fights for his own life. Willi den rechtkernon dat richi kistarkan. So, he wants to, kistarkan is to strengthen or solidify dat richi, the kingdom. Then rechtkernon for the people of goodwill, for the people who desire good things. Pidiu skal imo helfan der himmeles gewaltet. So, therefore, der himmeles gewaltet, the person who rules the heaven, skal imo helfan, shall help him. And a curious note, actually, is that helfan here is taking a dative object with imo, whereas in many other medieval Germanic languages, such as I believe Old English and also certainly Gothic, this actually takes a genitive object. So we've got a dative object for the verb helfen in Old High German, but a genitive object in Gothic. That's an interesting little curiosity there. Der Antichristos stet pidemo altfiante. The Antichrist stands. Now this is an interesting one. Pidemo altfiante, next to, alongside the ancient fiend. Stet pidemo satanse, stands next to Satan. Now, Germanic alliterative poetry of this kind is fond of these little homonymic pairings. So pidemo altfiante and pidemo satanse are probably not saying alongside the old enemy and beside Satan. It's probably saying that Satan is the old enemy and they're just synonyms of each other. But it's interesting that the Antichrist is someone different to these two. So the Antichrist stands next to Satan. Der innan varsenkan skal, who wishes to sink him. An alternative possible explanation is that the state here, the person doing the standing, is actually Elias, and the name has been omitted for metrical purposes. So maybe it's meant to be interpreted as the Antichrist stands by his old enemy. Elijah stands next to Satan. Der innan vartsenkan skal, who wishes to sink him. Although the problem is that there's nothing obvious in the text which would invite such a reading, but I think it's possible. You can make up your own mind and let me know in the comments which of those you think is more likely. But if we take it as demo altfiante and demo satanse referring to the same person, then it's interesting that the Antichrist is somebody different from Satan. And the Antichrist apparently wants to sink the Antichrist, so Satan wants to sink the Antichrist. So maybe this is a reference to Satan, wishing to corrupt other people and bring them into hell, and so Satan isn't exactly an ally to the people who are in hell. An analogy I've been told for it is that in this conception, hell is like a prison and Satan is maybe the jailer, but he is also bound, so he's maybe the head prisoner, but he's not necessarily a friend to the other prisoners. So, moving on, Pidiu skal in der viksteti funt bewalan. I mispronounce that all the time. So, therefore, he shall, in the battle place, fall, having been wounded. Enti indemosinde sigalos vereran. And he will end up victoryless on that path. And so I'm assuming this is referring to the Antichrist. Doch vanet des willo Gottmano. The will of good men, essentially, hopes for this, or many of the people of goodwill hope for this. That's Elias in demoviche arvarted verde, that Elias will become injured in this battle. So now maybe in that case the word vanet here could mean hope as in desire for, but it can also just mean expect in a more neutral sense. So this could refer to nonetheless. So although Satan or the Antichrist is going to fall in the battle and end up victoryless, nonetheless, Elias will still be injured in the battle, and men of goodwill expect that this is going to be the case. So it's actually kind of interesting that the representative of heaven in this case does not have a complete victory. Like Satan actually does still inflict some injury. So on to lines 50 to 62. Zodat Eliatzes plot in erda getriuvet, so in prenant die perga, poam nicis stentit, enig in erdu, aha drunknet, mor warsluicht sich, swilizat logio der Himmel, manno valet, brennet mittelgard, sten nicis stentit, verdet den sutat go in land, verdet mit diu virigo vison. Dar nimach dene andremo helfan vora demo muspile, dene dat spreta vassal allas verbrennet, enti vir enti luft its allas arvorpet. Var ist denne diu marcha, dar man dar eo mit sinen magen piech. Diu marcha is verbrunnen, diu sela stet bedungan, ni wets mit viu poatse. So veret si vise. Alright, so what does this mean? So that's Elias plot in erda triumphit. So as soon as Elijah's blood falls onto the earth, so in prenant die perga, so the mountains burn, poam ni gestenket enig in erdu. Not a single tree stands on the earth. This is really Armageddon that we've got here. Aha drunknet. The rivers dry up, more warsulicht sich. The sea swallows itself up. Suilitzot lorgiv der Himmel. The heaven burns with fire. Manno valet. The moon falls. Brennet mittelagard. Middle earth burns. Stein nie gestentet. The stone, not a stone will stand. Now, this reference to a stone not standing, you have to think about the context of early medieval Germanic people who, particularly after conversion, for the most part will only have been used to seeing stone buildings in association with the church. And if you think about the phenomenology of living and seeing wooden buildings, which you see start to rot and you have to keep repairing them, and people would in that time have seen wooden abandoned buildings decay and die, but the stone buildings owned by the church would have lasted forever. So stone has this sort of sense of permanency in Christianity at the time. It might also be a reference to the famous line where Jesus says to Peter, "You are the rock upon which I shall build my church." So saying here that when Elijah's blood falls on the ground, not a single stone will stand, that's really evocative stuff and driving home how severe this battle between Elijah and the Antichrist is. Veret denne stortago in land. So the day of judgment will come upon the land. Veret mit diu virigo vison. So it will come, the sort of judgment of men will come to, it will come to visit men with fire. So the judgment day will come to visit men with fire. Dar nimak dene mak andremo helfan. There nobody will be able to help another. Fora demo muspile. Before the judgment. So this is the word here, muspile, and it's got a lot of contested etymologies. Some people think that it might come from Latin, and I can't actually remember off the top of my head now what the proposed Latin etymology of this is. It could refer to a sort of massive slaughter, the killing of men. There's lots of different interpretations that could be had of it. It's got a contested etymology. And based on this context, Muspilli is clearly meant to be somewhat synonymous with a Stuataga, with the Judgment Day. But maybe it refers to the negative consequences of the Judgment Day. So nobody can help another in the face of this judgment, essentially, because the Judgment Day has already come. That's maybe my reading of it. Denna dat preta wasal alat verprinnet. So then the broad earth utterly burns, and he vir en die luft its alats of arfurpit, and fire and air engulf it all. So the literal earth turns into hell here. Waar est denne, die marcha, dar man dar eo mit sinnen magen piech. So where then is that border, that land, where man once sort of fought with his kin? So it's almost saying, like, we have these border disputes over the marches, the boundaries. And so what does that matter at the end of the days when Judgment Day comes and all the world burns in fire? What does that matter in the end? Die marcha ist verprunnen. The march is burned. Die Seele steht bedungen. The soul stands having been defeated. Niewits mit will boatse. No, nobody is able to remedy it with anything. So veret si savise. And thus the soul enters into torment. So this last line might be a sort of warning for the people who fight with others over the marches, over territorial disputes, saying, while you were focusing so much on this terrestrial battle, you ignored the fact that your soul was in mortal danger, and therefore at the end you shall, I guess, pay the price for that. And there we go. So that has been lines 37 to 62, which scholars believe are the second part which has been interpolated into Muspilli. And then straight afterwards, as we'll see in the next video, it goes back to talking about the Judgment Day, and there's no further mention of Elijah or the Antichrist. So you can make up your own mind there about whether or not they are the same poem or not. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this one, and I hope we'll see you in the next video to finish off reading through this poem. If you want me to teach you Latin, Old English or Gothic, I will not teach you Old High German because I'm not too good at it. But any of those three languages, you can subscribe to my Patreon, where I offer tuition at lower than market rates. And thank you so much to my 3 patrons who are supporting this channel. It really means a lot that people are supporting me financially. Thank you so much for it. You can also join my Discord server, which will also be linked in the description of this video. I tend to post these glosses as pictures there before I turn them into videos, so you'll get early access that way. So until next time, please like, comment, subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you have a nice day. Bye everyone.